What up, what up, what up? It's your boy D, and I'm back at you with another video. So, before we start anything, I just want to say thank you guys for finally helping me hit my goal of 1,000 subscribers. Forever gang, we did it. We got it. I thank you guys. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys for everything. Every comment I read, every type of constructive criticism, or just like the love y'all show, or sometimes educating me on this crazy world of professional wrestling. I just want to say thank you guys. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys. I love y'all and I appreciate y'all, and we are just getting started on this hell of a crazy journey we are on in this life called professional wrestling. So I thank you guys and I appreciate you guys. So now, with all that's being said, let's get into this video. So today, I am going to go over, finally got around to it, finally, life stopped being life, and I finally got to see the Iron Claw. So, I wanted to give you guys my opinion on the movie. And also, this is not only just going to be a movie review, this is also going to be something that I can be educated on, because I am proudly a Gen Z baby. I'm in the very beginning of Gen Z. I'm a 98 baby. So a lot of this stuff was way before my time. I have 5 brothers who all watch wrestling, and my oldest brother was born in 1986. So I believe the Von Erichs were all retired and done by the time of 1986. But once again, I could be wrong. So without further ado, we're going to get into the Iron Claw movie review. I really like this movie, and this movie was very interesting to me because I have seen other wrestling films. I've seen Ready to Rumble, The Wrestler. There was another movie about a gay wrestler back in the 30s, I believe, that was very good. What I liked about this movie, which was also very interesting to me about this movie was a lot more about family than it was wrestling, which concerned me at first, very much concerned me, because they are one of the most famous families in wrestling ever. Hint, that's why Cody Rhodes' wrestling has more than one royal family. That is one of the truest statements, because the Von Erichs are one of the greatest families ever. And watching this movie made me like, they showed you how important they were to wrestling, but the movie itself wasn't about wrestling. In which ways that could work, and in some ways it couldn't work. Like, I think whoever casted that god-awful actor who played Ric Flair, oh man, they need some help. They need to watch some actual Ric Flair. And because, like, I thought that actor was terrible. I thought the promo he gave was trash. He had one of the worst woos I ever seen. He didn't even hit the woo! He didn't even hit that right. That Ric Flair was hot basura, absolute trash. But it did show how big of a deal Ric Flair was at this time, because he really was. Even though a lot of people have told me and said that the Ric Flair stole a lot of his style from Buddy Rogers. But no doubt about it, very hard to mention wrestling, pro wrestling, without mentioning Ric Flair. Ric Flair is a Hall of Famer. Ric Flair is a GOAT at this thing we call at this thing we call pro wrestling. And Ric Flair is a lot of our favorite wrestler. So you got to give him the credit and respect for that. And one of the things I need to be educated on is, out of the Von Erichs, if none of them passed away, who do you guys think could have been your true world champion? And more importantly, who was the best wrestler out of the Von Erichs. Because the one thing about the Von Erichs I know is their feud with the Fabulous Freebirds, and they really didn't show the Fabulous Freebirds and Michael Hayes and them in this movie because it was so based around the family. So how I hear about it a lot, but like how magnificent and how big was the trajectory of the Fabulous Freebirds versus the Von Erichs. And then on top of that, they said the character Fritz, who was excellent, the character who played Fritz Von Erich in this movie, I thought was absolutely fantastic as Fritz Von Erich in this movie. And the question that I have about Fritz is, was he wrestling at all while his kids were wrestling? Because I don't think that's a bad question to ask you guys, because do you know how many old wrestlers there are? Like, you know what I mean? Who like look old, or like how long did Fritz wrestle? And I know in the movie they said that they wouldn't give him the NWA title because even though he deserved it. Is that a true thing? I know he played like a Nazi with somebody else, which is wild behavior. The fact that he played a Nazi, that is insane. And so I would love to hear more from you guys. If anybody knows anything about Fritz Von Erich's wrestling career, flood my comments. Because like they didn't really, like the beginning scene was shot so fire, but they didn't really dig all the way into his character and some like in his matches and his wrestling career and what he did in the wrestling career. So I'm very interested to see that. But then also what I've heard is the film says that they have 5 brothers. You have Kerry, you have Kevin, you have David, you have Mike, and then you had their little brother who was electrocuted. But the little bit that I saw was that they had a 6th brother who died by committing suicide. And apparently I heard that that the little brother who died actually loves wrestling more than all of them. That's very interesting. So what was going on with him? Was he too small? Was he just not athletic? What was his build like compared to like the rest of the build of the Von Erichs? Because they're kind of very big, tall, jack kind of dudes. So what were they like? And when I look at what was Chris like? When I look at the rest of this family and all they went through, I would love to know more about the mental state and the mental state of Kevin Von Erich. Because to me, one of the most touching parts of the movie is the ending. And the ending shows the kids running around, basically the 2 boys just being brothers, running around and having a ball. And you just see Zach crying. You just see Kevin Von Erich just bawling his eyes out, just being like, damn, I used to be a brother, and now I'm not a brother no more because all his brothers are gone. That shit was so sad. And then when the kids are like, don't worry, Dad, I'll be your brother. We're your brothers. It's okay for men to cry. Oh my goodness, my heart shattered into a million pieces. That part was so touching and so beautiful, which made me think of this question. So was that supposed to be the 2 Von Erichs that were that I believe are in AEW. It's Marshall and let me Google it. I don't remember the other son's name, and I don't want to. Eric's sons, Marshall and Ross Von Erich. Were those the two kids at the end? Let me know. I believe they are, because I believe he has. There's so many grandchildren in this damn family. I think this at the end of the movie said there was 13. So let me know, because I would love to hear what that first conversation was like when Marshall and Ross went up to Carrie and was just like, Dad, we want to wrestle, and we want to wrestle under the Von Erich name, which clearly there was some shit going on where they think that they were cursed. I would love to hear what that conversation was sounded like. I would love to hear the mental state of Kevin in that moment. To me, that would be so interesting. And another one of the most touching parts of this movie was when you see Carrie, and Carrie clearly has his foot back, and he's rowing that boat, and he sees his brothers, and he reunites with his brothers, and David is the world champion in heaven, and he gets to meet his little brother finally. Well, his older brother finally, but as a child, and they all just hug. And it's crazy, and it's so sad, because the only one there who was missing was Kevin. And that shit, oh man, that shit has to be so awful. So another thing I want to hear about is, I believe Fritz passed away from like a cancer or something like that, I think I read. What happened to the mom? Is the mom still alive? Or did the mom end up passing away later or during? What happened to the mom? If there's one thing in this movie I wish we got more of, was more of the life of the mom. Like, what, I know the mom was like a painter, and then she stopped painting to help the kids and all that stuff, but like, what happened to the mom after that? Because like, one of the most compelling scenes to me was when Mike died. I'm just making sure I don't butcher any of these legends. Yep. So when Mike Von Erich died, what happened? And you see her just struggling to get dressed to go to this funeral, and she's trying her hardest not to cry. We know she was a woman of faith. What happened to her? That's the next thing I would like to know. What happened to Mrs. Von Erich, and how did she and Fritz move forward after the death of their sons? Especially, and I believe I read that the one thing that wasn't true was you don't see we don't see Kevin actually carrying Carrie's body into the house. I believe Fritz was the first person to find him. And that's such a fucked up memory to live with, man. Like, that is absolutely terrible. It is so sad, and it's uncomfortable. So, like, how did these people live after this? I thought this movie was really nice. I thought it was really great. But I'm not surprised on how it looked, because A24's camera work and their transitions and how they're establishing shots, they're always incredible, and they're always fire, and that's what A24 is really built off of. I actually like a lot of the grainy scenes in this movie, but it literally made you feel like you were in the 70s. It made you feel like you were in the 70s. This movie didn't look like just good lighting, and just a gloomy effect of past times. This looked like this was shot in past times. And I genuinely appreciate that. And one of the things I like the most about this movie, and like the look of the movie, that I would love to know more about, is the Sportatorium. I believe, so at the end, I know that Kevin sold the company, World Class Championship Wrestling. I know he sold the company. So what happened to the Sportatorium? Did it become like a music venue or something? Did it get torn down? What actually? I'm not from Texas, guys. I can tell you right now, this might be a dumb question, and I'm sorry. I'm from New York. So, what actually happened to the Sportatorium? Did it get torn down? Were there still wrestling events held there? I would love to know what happened to the Sportatorium, because there's a lot of history in there. You know, there is so much history in there. Because that's insane. Because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Stone Cold and The Undertaker, obviously not at the same show, obviously not. But I believe that The Undertaker Stone Cold and them were big. Stone Cold and The Undertaker were huge fans of the Von Erichs, and I believe one of them saw the Von Erichs perform in the Sportatorium, and that's what made them become fans. And that's insane, because we know the trajectory of Stone Cold and The Undertaker and what they went on to do. I believe Shawn Michaels also was a fan of the Von Erichs, but I know Ric Flair was his guy. So I think the question I'm trying to ask is, who are some of the, because there's got to be so many, but who were some of the wrestlers that were birthed because of the Von Erichs? Because this is such a legendary family. So I would love to know more wrestlers who were influenced by the Von Erichs, and how were they influenced by the Von Erichs? Because that's a very interesting thing that I would love to know more about. I'm not coming to you guys as a pro wrestling expert where, no, this is this way, no, this is that way. Obviously, I was not around in this time. Not at all. So I would love to know more. I would love to be educated about this. But finally, the only thing that I was very interested in that had me like, this is interesting, honestly, was the promotion of the Iron Claw. Yes, you saw it a lot of places, especially in the pro wrestling culture. You've seen this movie everywhere. But how come, and I know Marshall and Ross are in AEW, how come they didn't, I know they had a couple matches here, and I know they had a couple matches to promote the movie, but wasn't one they fought on Rampage, and then the next one they fought on Collision? Why weren't they given a bigger light? I feel like they should have been in a way bigger light. And I wanted to know because what happened to MJF also in this movie? Because wasn't MJF in this movie? I didn't see MJF at all in this movie. So I'm very curious on if MJF was cut in this movie, why he was cut in this movie. If he was in this movie, please educate me and tell me where he was in this movie. Because I remember that was one of the bigger things, was that MJF was in this movie because it had a big-ass cast and with big-ass stars. I think Zac Efron and Jeremy White Allen and the other actors and whoever played Fritz Von Erich, they all killed their roles. So I was very interested to see what MJF was going to do in this movie, but I feel like he wasn't even in the movie. I don't remember seeing MJF in this movie. So that's very interesting to me. So I would love to know more about that. And I also wonder if, because MJF, because he was the AEW World Heavyweight Champion, I wonder if, because MJF wasn't really in this movie, I wonder if he was in this movie, AEW would have promoted it harder. Because I feel like Marshall and Ross should have had a huge fucking tag team match on an AEW Dynamite or on the next big AEW pay-per-view. Because I believe they still come out to Stranglehold by Ted Nugent. That would have been a big, huge moment, especially on a company that's literally made for wrestling fans. Literally, that's what AEW is made for. Because I just think that, this movie, promotion-wise, because I really loved this movie. I thought this movie was incredible. But I think if this movie was in the hands of, obviously not in the hands, directed, but, what I mean is, if this movie had a promotion run or a promotion deal with the WWE, I think this movie could have been a lot bigger and could have reached more people. Because as much as a lot of people like this movie, I believe Wonka beat this movie in like the box office, but not saying that it didn't do very well. But what I'm saying is I feel like this movie would have been pushed more, and I think Ross and Marshall would have had like a big tag team match, say against like, I don't know, the Judgment Day or the Usos or somebody. Like, I feel like we could have gave Marshall and Ross and say Kevin comes out, Iron Claw, somebody. I believe this would have looked a lot better and a lot stronger even if AEW did it on Dynamite and not use this for Collision or AEW Rampage. So my next and final question is, how long have Marshall and Ross been wrestling? I believe, by a little glimpse of YouTube, I believe they've performed in MLW once. I believe I saw one of them fought Jacob Fatu, who I'm also trying to get in touch with, like, not in touch with, but like learn more about his wrestling work, as he's a big free agent coming in 2024. So like, how are Ross and Marshall? How are their skills in the ring? And if anything, do they remind you of any of the other siblings, any of the other Von Erichs? These are things I would love to know. But I love this movie. I really thought this movie was great. I would love to see it again. I probably will see it again. The soundtrack in this movie is incredible. The camera work in this movie is incredible. The way it's shot, the way it's set up, the dim lighting, the way the credits and the titles and the graphics come on the screen. I really felt like I was in the 70s, felt like one of these kids watching wrestling. And I absolutely loved it. I love the story about this family, as tragic as it is. I hope Kevin is in a great place in his life, mentally and physically. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. If you're asking me to score this movie, I give this movie a really big 8.5 out of 10. Thought this movie was great. I just think it could have been done better promotional-wise, but that's just me. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I love you. I appreciate y'all. Once again, thank you again for letting me hit 1,000 subs. We are on the rise. It is not over yet. We still got more work to do. Thank you guys for listening. Love y'all. I appreciate y'all. And until forever finds you.